Hey everyone, this is Jungkook. Before we start, I want to know where you're listening from. Drop your country in the comments below. I never thought I'd sit in a quiet room like this and admit that I was the one who didn't see what mattered. I used to think discipline could fix anything. Sing harder, train longer, outwork, whatever felt messy inside. But there's this moment burned into me now, and it won't let me pretend I'm the hero of my own story. I walked into a hallway after a long day, a place with soft yellow light and the gentle hum of an old air conditioner, and I saw the person I love standing by a window with tears on her face. No big scene, no screaming, just quiet, slow tears that made me feel like the loudest thing in the world was my own heartbeat. In that instant, I knew I'd been wrong about what love requires. Not wrong in theory, wrong in practice, wrong in the daily choices that teach your heart what it actually believes. There's a part of me that has always loved the grind, the early mornings, the sweat on the floor, the soreness that tells you progress is real. I confuse that grind with love itself, as if effort in one domain transfers automatically to the other. I thought if I was reliable in my schedule, that meant I was reliable in my presence. If I made plans for a future together, that meant I was showing up for today. It's easy to hide behind ambition when the lights are bright and people cheer for the strongest version of you. It's harder to admit that the strongest version of you at work can be the most fragile version of you at home. I used to come back from rehearsals wired with adrenaline, scrolling through ideas, planning the next step, thinking about a note to polish, a run to make cleaner, a concept to build from scratch. Noise followed me into every room. I wore my drive like armor and didn't notice how sharp the edges were for the person standing close. I promised we would keep our life simple, that I would protect what was small and real between us. I said all the right things. But saying isn't practicing. Without practice, love is just a resolution on New Year's Day, pure for a moment, then buried under habits. That night in the hallway, I walked toward her and felt the weight of all the almost I'd been carrying. Almost present, almost honest, almost gentle. Tears don't accuse you the way words do. They just tell the truth with a silence that leaves nowhere to run. I didn't need to hear a list of mistakes. I could see them lined up like unreturned messages, like dinners eaten in distracted bites, like moments I had promised to keep sacred but let get squeezed by schedules I claimed were immovable. I always told myself it was temporary. One more week of this, then I'll breathe. One more project, then I'll give us more time. Love doesn't starve you in one room so it can feed you in another later. Love is the room. If there's nothing in it today, there's not magically a feast tomorrow. I think about the members a lot when I try to make sense of all this. Each of them has seen me in the glossy version and in the stripped down version. RM has this way of holding a thought until it reveals what it's hiding. He doesn't force a point, he waits, he listens, and suddenly the problem admits what it is. That patience has saved me more times than I can count. Jin reminds me that warmth is not a weakness and that taking care of people is a kind of excellence that never trends but always matters. Suga's honesty has taught me that clarity is kindness even when it stings a little, because it saves you from drifting into a story you never wanted. J-Hope carries the kind of joy that doesn't deny pain but keeps choosing light anyway. And that choice is contagious when you're tired of your own shadow. Jimin knows how to lower his voice when the world gets too loud and make a small space feel safe again. Taehyung brings that stillness that turns a room into a frame, and when he looks at you, it's like he's asking the room to be honest too. Being around them shaped the part of me that can feel the difference between performance and presence. I just didn't realize how much I needed to bring that difference home. There are days when fame feels like a mirror placed too close to your face. Every pore looks bigger than it is. You start adjusting yourself in tiny ways for angles that don't even exist in real life. You get good at managing perception, and if you're not careful, you start doing that with the people who love you. You pose your best self even in private and forget that love doesn't need your best self, it needs your whole self. The tired self, the confused self, the version of you that says, I don't know what I'm feeling right now, but can I sit here with you until I can name it? I used to think winning the day meant hitting every target, but some targets don't belong on a checklist. Some wins are softer, sitting on the floor with the phone on airplane mode, hearing the rain hit the window and not trying to turn it into a soundtrack, letting the quiet do what applause can't. I started to learn that when I began volunteering at a small community space. No lights, no stage, just people with everyday problems and everyday courage. I noticed how the simplest acts recalibrate your insights. Stacking chairs, sweeping a corner, handing someone a cup of water, remembering the name they told you last week. You think you're helping someone else, but your own priorities begin to shift into focus. Service is like a mirror turned outward that shows you who you are without shouting. That's where I began to understand her more deeply too. Not because of something dramatic, but because of how she moved through the room when no one was clapping. She remembered details about people's lives that had no reason to be strategic. She was present in a way that doesn't punish you for not being perfect. Presence like that doesn't try to fix you. It meets you where you are and refuses to lie to you. It's easy to fall in love with flashes. It's rarer to fall in love with steadiness. Steadiness looks boring from far away until you realize it's the only thing that holds when the weather changes. I think about that hallway moment, the way people think about an old scar they keep touching without realizing. It hurts a little, but it tells you who you were and who you're trying to be now. I used to assign meaning to big gestures, a trip, a gift, a statement. Those things matter, but they don't build a life on their own. A life is built by boring faithfulness, by choosing to be where your feet are, by answering the same simple needs in slightly different ways every single day, by practicing the same values when no one is counting. If you want to be trusted, you practice being trustworthy when the moment is small. If you want to be gentle, you practice lowering your voice when no one's recording. If you want to love, you practice not leaving the room just because your thoughts are moving faster than your breath. It's strange to admit that I misunderstood some things I thought I mastered. Discipline taught me control. Love teaches surrender. Performance taught me timing. Love teaches patience that doesn't check the clock. Art taught me how to shape emotion into something beautiful. Love asked me to let emotion be messy and human without trying to turn it into anything. There's a humility in that which I resisted. Because humility never gets a standing ovation. It only builds a foundation quietly, steadily, until one day you realize the room you're standing in doesn't shake so easily anymore. I know what people might say when they see headlines. They'll guess motives, they'll measure timelines, they'll pick at differences, age, schedules, money, attention, the usual things that pull love into court. I don't blame anyone for being curious, but I've learned that the truest proof of love is boring from the outside. It looks like two people making food after a long day and cleaning the kitchen, even though both are tired. It looks like leaving the phone across the room because your eyes belong here. It looks like apologizing without a speech and changing a habit without announcing it. It looks like admitting you are wrong as if you're saying your name, because it's not a performance, it's the truth. When I saw her cry, I wanted to fix it in a single moment. That's not how tears work. Tears are a measurement tool. They show you the distance between what you promised and what you practiced. The only way to shorten that distance is day by day. So I started with small things, finishing the conversation I was in, not the one in my head. Choosing a quiet dinner even when a louder option looked more fun on a screen. Standing in the kitchen and listening without waiting for my turn to talk. Letting my schedule be flexible around a human being, not the other way around. None of that shows up in a highlight reel, but it shows up in the way a room feels when you walk into it. It shows up in the way someone's shoulders relax because they trust you to stay. I keep thinking about the boys and how they shaped me for this. Not in the public way people see, but in the private muscle you build by staying together through every season. We learned how to practice over and over whether a camera was on or not. Practice is what love is made of. Not a practice run, but practice as a way of living. You fail, you adjust, You come back tomorrow. You keep the beat even when your chest is tight. You give the other person the best seat in the memory you're making. And you don't need to be the center of it for it to be real. There's another truth I'm only now beginning to accept. Sometimes the best parts of your life arrive when you stop auditioning for them. I used to imagine a perfect version of myself who would finally be ready for the kind of love I said I wanted. That version never showed up. The person who did show up was me, with all my edges. Love didn't ask me to file them down to look smoother. It asked me to hold them more gently so I wouldn't cut the people standing close. That's a different kind of work. It's not glamorous, it's slower, but it lasts because it changes you from the inside out. If you're listening to this somewhere far away, maybe on a bus ride home or at a desk after midnight, maybe you felt that hallway moment too. Maybe you realized you weren't the villain of your story, but you also weren't the hero you hoped you'd be. Maybe you've been promising some future version of presents to someone you love while handing them the leftovers of today. I'm not here to write a pretty ending for you. I'm just here to say the beginning isn't dramatic. It's practical. Turn your phone over, sit a little longer. Ask one honest question, and don't rush the silence that follows. Practice who you said you wanted to be. I don't know everything about love. I don't think anyone does. But I know what it felt like to see tears catch the light in a quiet hallway and realize the room I said I would protect had been slowly emptied by the noise I kept inviting in. I know what it felt like to take responsibility without turning it into a speech. I know that the right kind of love doesn't make you smaller, it makes you honest. Honest is heavier at first, then it gets easier to carry because it fits. Tonight, the air in this room feels different than it did when I started talking. Maybe that's just me breathing slower. Maybe that's what happens when you tell the truth out loud and let it settle. The rain has started outside, tapping the glass in an arrhythmic pattern that somehow sounds like a metronome for a new pace. I used to move at the speed of results. I'm learning to move at the speed of understanding. Results come and go. Understanding stays and keeps you from repeating the same scene with new actors. I saw my future wife cry, and I knew I was wrong. Not wrong about love, wrong about how to love. I'm not trying to erase that moment. I'm trying to honor it by letting it change how I live the next ones. If the only thing you take from this is that showing up today matters more than promising you'll show up next month, then maybe we've met in the place that matters. If you're trying to hold a life together with big, impressive gestures, let me tell you, the small ones hold better. And if you're afraid you've already missed your chance, I'll tell you what I'm telling myself every morning now. You haven't. The door is usually closer than it looks when you stop rehearsing the apology and start turning the handle. I'm still learning, I'm still practicing, and practice is finally starting to look like love. I kept replaying that hallway in my head for days, not as punishment, but as a way to hold myself accountable to what needed to change. The first real change was invisible to anyone else. I started measuring my day by presence instead of productivity. It felt awkward at first, like switching the dominant hand you write with. I catch myself drifting into planning mode while sitting across from her, the old reflex that scans 5 future moments and skips the one I'm actually in. So I train myself the same way I train for a performance, with reps so small they almost look silly. Breathe slower. Put the phone where I can't touch it without standing up. Notice the temperature of the room. Notice her posture. Notice the way a sentence carries a feeling under it. If love is practice, then attention is form, and I had to rebuild mine from the ground up. I told the members what I was trying to do, not in some big announcement, but in the natural stops between everything else. RM nodded the way he does when he knows there's more under the surface and told me that alignment is like tuning, not fixing. You don't hit it once and walk away, you keep adjusting as the song breathes. Jin reminded me gently that care is most real when it's unannounced. The small, ordinary servings that no one posts about. Suga's words landed like clean air. That clarity is a gift you give to the person you love so they don't have to guess who they're with. J-Hope showed me with his actions that joy is not noise, it's a decision to be fully here. and that decision multiplies when two people choose it at the same time. Jimin's quiet presence pulled a chair out for my honesty and made it comfortable to sit there without dressing it up. Taehyung stood beside me in a kind of stillness that made the room more honest than any speech could. It's funny how years of sharing stages with them taught me muscles I didn't know I'd need at home. Listening as an art, adapting without panic, trusting that small, steady choices build the strongest chorus. I started showing up at the community space again, not because I thought service would impress anyone, but because it resets the scale inside me. There's nothing glamorous about stacking boxes or wiping tables, but these tiny jobs keep your ego from becoming the weather. I realized I'm calmer after I've done something that doesn't ask for applause, and that calm is the version of me she can rest inside. I used to believe romance needed big scenes to stay alive. Lately I'm learning romance is how you move through small scenes without rushing them. Make the tea correctly. Fold the blanket the way she likes it without needing a thank you. Remember the story she told last week and ask how it ended. Even if the world thinks your headlines should be bigger than that. There were days when the old rhythms tried to take the wheel back. A schedule would swell, a project would spill into the night, a plan we made would tremble. In those moments, I didn't deliver speeches. I made trades. If I had to lose an evening, I gave back a morning fully. If I had to travel, I gave my absence a shape that felt honest, shared details, not excuses, clear timelines, not maybe promises. She didn't need me perfect. She needed me predictable in the ways that matter. Predictable is not a boring word when your heart is looking for someplace solid to stand. We talk more about the real stuff that floats underneath any love story no one wants to admit out loud. Money is a wind you can't see, but you can feel it changing the room if you don't anchor things down. Attention from strangers is a kind of weather that can knock things over if the windows are always open. The expectations that come with culture and family can be both safety and pressure depending on the day. We didn't try to erase any of it. We put names to it and agreed to carry it together in pieces small enough to hold without resentment. I stopped pretending that my intensity was a harmless quirk. Intensity is fire. It cooks or it burns depending on where you put it. I kept thinking about the promise I'd made early on, the one I broke without meaning to. That our life would be simple where it counts. Simple doesn't mean empty. Simple means arranged around what matters, so everything else has to ask permission. I began drawing smaller circles around the hours we called ours. Even when I failed, the act of drawing the circle again the next day changed me. That repetition felt like a kind of prayer. This is the center, keep it whole. One evening, after a day that behaved for once, the city outside our windows softened into that bluish hour where everything looks gentle. We cooked together without rushing, the kind of meal that won't make any list, but somehow tastes like relief. I noticed that the quiet wasn't heavy anymore. It was full in the way a room feels when it knows the people inside it are not half there. I realized I had been chasing a feeling that was always waiting on the other side of attention. I didn't need a new life. I needed to live this one at a different pace. I also faced that stubborn part of me that equates effort with outcomes. Some days, even with my best attempts, I could still see the sadness in her eyes from what had piled up before. The old me wanted to fix that in one dramatic act. The me I'm trying to be trusts that healing doesn't obey timelines or cinematics. It notices consistency and relaxes slowly. When I felt impatience rising, I treated it like a false alarm. Breathe, stay, do the next unremarkable kind thing, and don't audit it for results. There's a memory I keep close now because it sums up what I'm learning. We were leaving the community space late, the kind of late where speech gets quiet and footsteps learn each other's rhythm. A summer storm had passed and left the ground with that clean smell. She paused to pick up a small piece of trash that the rain had missed and placed it where it belonged without making a moment out of it. Something about that tiny decision felt like a map. Love is mostly picking things up before they trip the other person. Not because you're worried about credit, but because you've decided the whole room is a shared responsibility. When I replay that mental clip, I'm reminded that I want to be that kind of man. the one who makes the ground safer and the air softer by how he moves. Family came into focus too, the way it always does when life gets real. I thought about the elders who taught me to greet the day with gratitude before I greet the work. I thought about the kids we might raise someday and the invisible lessons they would learn from the way we handle ordinary afternoon. I thought about the fans who send messages that sound like prayers and how much I want to deserve the trust hidden inside those words. Success is a loud teacher. It tells you what the world notices. Love is a quiet teacher. It tells you what actually holds. On a morning that didn't need to be special, I sat alone with coffee cooling too fast and wrote down a line I didn't want to forget. Stop trying to impress love and start trying to join it. Joining it looks like 1,000 tiny course corrections. It looks like catching yourself mid-scroll and choosing to ask a real question instead. It looks like deleting a sentence from a message because truth doesn't need decoration. It looks like telling the people who walk with you that you're changing and then proving it with the way you use a Tuesday. I don't know exactly when the hallway memory stopped feeling like a verdict and started feeling like a compass. Maybe it was the first time I saw her laugh again in that easy way that doesn't apologize for being happy. Maybe it was when I noticed my own chest loosen at the sound of a quiet room, because quiet no longer meant distance, it meant rest. Or maybe it's just a slow miracle that happens when you keep doing the right small thing long enough for your heart to trust that you mean it. What I do know is this: I used to collect moments that looked impressive. Now I'm learning to build moments that can carry weight. A promise is not the words you say when your heart is shiny and brave. A promise is the shape your day takes when no one is grading you. I saw my future wife cry and I knew I was wrong. The way back wasn't a speech or a stunt. It was a long walk through ordinary rooms, carrying smaller loads more, honestly, until the house inside both of us started to feel lived in again. And tonight, as the city slows and the window reflects a version of me that looks more like someone I could trust, I'm grateful that love kept the light on while I learned how to get home. Some mornings I wake before the alarm and the room feels like a page I haven't written on yet. Those are the hours I trust the most. I move slow, try not to make the day sprint before it even stands up. I make coffee and listen to the small sounds a house makes when it's not performing for anyone. There's a comfort in that quiet I didn't know I needed. For years I thought loud meant alive. Now I can feel how alive it is when the air just sits and holds you without asking for anything back. I started carrying a small notebook again, not for lyrics or plans, just for proof that I'm learning. I write down tiny things that would be invisible if I didn't catch them. The way she rests her hand on the table when she's thinking. The way the hallway smells different after the rain. The way my chest softens when I stop trying to win and start trying to join. If I can't notice these things, I can't keep them. And love, I'm finding, is mostly about keeping what matters instead of proving you can gather more. The schedule did what schedules do. It flexed and pushed and tried to take the chair at the head of the table. I watched it happen like weather rolling in. There was a run of days where everything wanted us. Rehearsals stacked, calls added themselves to the margins. Travel that seemed small on paper grew teeth in real life. In the past, I would have handled it by becoming sharper and faster. This time, I chose to become clearer and slower. That didn't fix the load, but it kept the weight honest. I stopped saying later as a promise. I started saying now in small pieces. Now can be 5 minutes of full attention that lands better than 2 hours of distracted presence. Now can be a note left in the place where the day will bump into it. And remember, we are building something real on purpose. People assume that a public life teaches you how to hold a private one. It doesn't. A public life teaches you how to frame things. A private life teaches you how to feel them. I'm learning to respect the difference. When I'm out there, my job is to connect wide. When I'm in here, my responsibility is to connect deep. Wide is thrilling, deep is steady, wide gets applause, deep gets trust. I need both to be whole. But if I have to choose in a moment, I want to choose trust. I kept returning to the community space because it's where my edges get sanded down. There's something about stacking the same chairs, sweeping the same corner, peeling fruit for people who are tired from ordinary reasons that resets me. When I'm there, I remember that effort isn't a costume, it's a language. People feel whether you speak it or you only perform it. I used to think service was giving. Lately, I think service is listening with your hands. You don't ask the moment to fit your pace. You let your hands learn the pace of the moment. There was a week when every plan tried to come undone. One of the boys had a personal storm that needed a quiet place to drain. We've always been each other's room like that. We made space without making a show of it. Another friend lost someone they loved, and grief sat on the floor with us like a heavy suitcase no one knows how to lift. The city hummed with headlines I couldn't control. My calendar grew tricky in ways I didn't agree to. In the middle of all that, I felt the temptation to slip back into a version of me that could override feelings with momentum, but that's the version that misses the hallway tears and tells himself it's not that bad. I didn't want to be him again, so I stayed. I let the complicated things be complicated without trying to tidy them fast enough to post. When I look back on the members and the way we've stayed a unit, I can see the muscle memory we built for times like this. RM has a gift for setting the tempo of a room, so honesty fits inside it. Jin still finds the joke that lets air back in without belittling the pain, and it's a kind of medicine. Suga's directness keeps us from drifting into pretty lies. J-Hope keeps choosing light the way some people keep choosing shortcuts, and it changes the map. Jimin knows when to let silence be the answer, and somehow the silence tells you what to do next. Taehyung has this watchful calm that gives everyone permission to land. The more I practice love, the more I realize the band taught me the basics without calling it a lesson. I used to think consistency meant never bending. Now I think consistency means bending in the same direction on purpose. I made a list of the directions I want to bend and taped it inside a drawer I open every morning. Be where your feet are. Lower your voice first. Lead with the smaller truth and let it be enough. Ask what she needs without preparing a defense. Choose a single thing to carry through the whole day and finish it. Leave one room better than you found it, even if all you can do is push the chair in. It sounds simple. And it is. Simple does not mean easy, but simple is what stays when your energy goes up and down. There's a corner of the city where the street lights are spaced too far apart and the dark patches make the light feel more expensive. We walked there one night, not to solve anything, just to be. The air was cool enough to keep us close without saying why. I noticed I wasn't reaching ahead to the next conversation. I wasn't mentally editing what I might say if someone asked about us. I wasn't grading myself. I was just there, and being there felt like something I could practice forever. When we got home, everything looked the same and nothing did. The room felt like it remembered us differently, as if the walls had been waiting for this version of quiet. I've been thinking a lot about apologies, the kind that do their work and the kind that perform working. A real apology doesn't audition. It lays down a new path and walks it while you watch. I've made the other kind before. Too many words, not enough change. I don't want to do that anymore. The apology I'm making now is shaped like consistent mornings and honest nights. It's shaped like planning my effort where it matters instead of letting effort spill everywhere and hoping some of it lands on love by accident. There's a part of me that still loves the big scene. The show. The moment that lifts a crowd in one breath. I'll always love it. It's where I learned how to give myself completely without keeping a safe piece hidden. But I'm learning that home is not a stage and love is not a set list. You don't repeat last night's version because it worked. You show up and listen to the room and sing what the room needs. Even if it's softer and shorter than your ego prefers. Some nights that feels like an art I've barely started to learn. But I can tell it's the right art because the result isn't applause. The result is calm. The public questions kept coming the way they always do. People guessing motives, assigning timelines, doing math about hearts. Like you can tally a soul and come up with a clean answer. I don't resent it. Curiosity is human. But I stopped trying to participate in that game. I don't need to fix what other people think to build something that works in this room. I don't need to explain my love into safety. I need to practice it into strength. Practice makes opinions less loud, even the ones that originate in my own head. One afternoon, the rain returned, and the city that usually moves like a drumline slowed down to something closer to a heartbeat. I stood at the window and remembered the first time I saw her tears and knew I was wrong. I didn't want to rewrite that memory anymore. I wanted to understand it as the moment my life divided into before and after. Before, I organized love around achievement. After, I organized achievement around love. That shift doesn't make my drive smaller. It makes it true. It gives it a reason that doesn't disappear when the lights go off. I thought about future kids we might raise and the kind of home that teaches them what love is without ever saying the word. A home where kindness is a reflex and not a performance. A home where everyone knows where the bandages are, where the good pens are, where the truth sits when it's tired. A home where meals aren't perfect, but they're shared and the mess is cleaned by all the hands that made it. I don't know what our family will look like. I just know I want it to be built from habits that can survive bad days. There's a single chair in our place that's become a kind of checkpoint for me. I sit there before the day tries to take over and I ask one simple question. What does love want from me today that ambition can't give it for me? The answers are never dramatic. Send the message now, not at the end of the night. Say thank you in a way that proves you noticed. Keep the evening we set aside, even if something glittery tries to steal it. Put the phone down before you sit down. Breathe when you feel the quickness return. Remember that you can't microwave trust. You have to slow cook it until the house smells like something you want to come home to. I still mess up. I still feel old instincts jump the line. But I mess up less urgently. I recover faster. I tell the truth sooner. And each time I do, I can feel the room inside both of us getting sturdier. That's how I know change is happening in the parts of me that don't care what anyone thinks. The change that lasts doesn't post itself. It shows up in how you move around the person you love. Softer, clearer, closer to the ground. Sometimes, late at night, I listen for the city after it falls asleep and count how many lights are still on in the buildings I can see. There's always one window burning somewhere, some other person trying to learn what I'm trying to learn, how to keep the important things important when everything is begging to be urgent. I don't have a perfect answer yet, but I do have a hallway that taught me to stop making promises with tomorrow's mouth and start keeping them with today's hands. And I have these mornings that feel like pages waiting for ink. If I can fill them with attention, maybe the rest of the day will remember what it came here to do. There are stretches of time that don't announce themselves as turning points, but later you can circle them on a calendar because everything that came after sounds different. The next stretch like that arrived quietly. It wasn't dramatic. No big announcement, no fireworks. Just a run of days that held steady, even when the outside world tried to lean on us. I kept waking up and choosing the same small things. And the small things started to feel like a rhythm instead of a repair. I could feel my shoulders drop in rooms that used to make me brace. The hallway memory was still there, but it wasn't a punishment anymore. It had become a teacher I respected. Work picked up the way it always does, but my pace inside, it changed. I stopped treating every request like a house on fire. I started choosing which flames were real and which were bright but harmless. That didn't make me less driven. It made me honest about where the engine should point. When rehearsals stretched and the lights felt heavier than usual, I carried the quiet with me instead of leaving it at the door. I learned to let calm set the tempo before I touched the first note. It made the work stronger and strangely more human. Like the songs could breathe without me forcing air into them. Family drifted into the foreground in a way that felt natural instead of negotiated. I thought about the elders whose ordinary days made a kind of blueprint I'm only now beginning to read correct. The way a meal on a weeknight carries a different weight when everyone chooses to sit without rushing. The way a home teaches you to hear soft things. The kettle, the page turn, the sigh that means I trust you. without any extra decoration. I realized I want to build that kind of sound into whatever future we make soft things loud enough to matter. The members kept being the mirror that tells me the truth without making it a performance. We circled through a period where each of us had a different kind of tired. Not the show kind, the life kind, and we did what we've always done best. We made room. It's not flashy to make room. You clear space, you move a chair, you hand someone the quiet they don't know how to ask for. I watched us do that and felt a gratitude that lives deeper than words. Years of sharing stages taught us how to stand in front of noise. Years of sharing life taught us how to stand behind one another. That second skill is the one I needed most for love. I kept going back to the community space. At first it was habit, then it became hunger. I needed the reminder that I am one person among many, that a day can be measured by what you carried for someone else without turning it into a headline. There's a sink in the back that leaks just enough to be annoying. I learned where to place the bucket so the drip hits the side instead of the bottom and doesn't echo through the room. It's such a small thing, not worth telling, except that it taught me how much noise I had normalized. How often I'd let minor inconveniences grow teeth because I hadn't taken the 20 seconds required to care. Love is mostly 20-second choices that prevent 1,000 small aches later. We started mapping the future with pencils instead of markers. Pencils let you change your mind without tearing the page. Trips we might take. Holidays we would try to keep free. The kind of mornings we want more than the kind of pictures. Money came up like it should. Not as a test, but as terrain. Wealth can tilt a room if you pretend it doesn't exist. We chose to talk about it like whether real, sometimes disruptive, manageable if you close the windows and check the forecast together. Attention came up too. It's not romantic to admit that strangers' eyes follow you into your own house, but they do. We decided where to hang the curtains and where to keep the view open. Privacy isn't secrecy. It's stewardship. There was a day when the old speed tried to make a comeback in a louder way. Pressures layered themselves, deliverables, travel, a shoot that wanted to slide into a day we'd circled for ourselves. I felt the familiar pull to apologize later and push now, the magnetic field of just this once, that always seems to multiply. I could hear my mind building a case. Important, urgent, inevitable. Then I pictured the hallway again, the shape of those tears, and I let the picture interrupt the case. I wrote one message that told the truth without drama. Not today. I kept the circle we drew intact. The sky didn't fall. The work found another time. And the look on her face held a kind of relief that cannot be scheduled into existence. You have to earn it in real time. I noticed another shift I didn't expect. Joy returned differently. It stopped bursting and started settling. Laughter didn't have to be loud to be real. It arrived like a breeze that cools the skin instead of a gust that knocks you off balance. We'd be in the kitchen with the radio low, moving around each other the way people do when they know the other person's next step without looking. And I would feel this almost physical click inside. Not the click of a door closing, but the click of a frame, finding the right hanging point so the picture stays straight. It's a tiny sound, but once you hear it, you stop adjusting the frame every time you walk past. I kept the notebook close because I wanted receipts for my own growth. I wrote down small wins so I wouldn't discount them later. Chose presents over planning during dinner. Stopped a spiral by telling the truth sooner. Sat on the floor when the couch felt too formal for the mood. Sent the message before it turned into an apology. Put the phone in another room without making a ceremony out of it. I wrote losses down too, not to shame myself, but to refuse the comfort of forgetting. Let work take a night, I promise. Heard a story and tried to fix it instead of holding it. Reach for distraction when the conversation asks for patience. The page doesn't lie. It also doesn't yell. It just shows you what's happening and invites you to keep writing a better pattern. One weekend, we drove out of the city to a place where the fields looked like they've been breathing the same way for 100 years. The road unwound and gave us that kind of quiet you can only hear when the buildings stop telling you what to look at. We walked along a path lined with trees that still had last season's stories in their bark. I kept thinking about the kids we might raise someday and how much I want them to recognize this specific kind of peace. Not the peace you pose for. The kind you live into by making 1,000 unremarkable choices in the same direction. A home where love is not a performance but a temperature you can feel with your eyes closed. That evening, as the sun fell into that soft orange that makes everything look honest, we stopped by a little roadside stand and bought fruit that tasted like it remembered the ground it grew from. We ate leaning against the car, sticky and unhurried, the way time feels when you finally stop asking it to impress you. I realized I wasn't chasing a cinematic moment. I was standing inside one of those frames you can only see clearly later. The kind that turns into a story you tell because it taught you how to live, not because it sparkled. Back in the city, I felt a steady certainty begin to take shape. Not a rush, not a need to fix what can't be fixed by a single act. A certainty built from seeing who we are when days don't cooperate and when they do. I found myself paying attention to how my yes felt in my body. Was it heavy and bargaining, or was it light and clear? The clear ones stacked up. They pointed in the same direction every time. They said commitment isn't a cage. It's a chosen path that lets your steps mean more than they do when you're wandering. I'm careful with symbols because they can get loud and start talking over the thing they're supposed to honor. But I started thinking about a ring the way you think about a good word. Simple, true, sturdy enough to hold being said every day. I didn't want an event that swallowed the meaning. I wanted a moment that matched the way we'd been living. Small and honest, place where our hands already know what to do. I stopped imagining elaborate plans and started picturing the table where we usually drink tea. The light on the wall at certain hours, the exact place we stand when we say goodnight, even when we're both tired. I thought, if it's real, it will fit there. Before any decision, I sat in the checkpoint chair and asked the question I'd been asking each morning. What does love want from me today that ambition can't give it for me? The answer came quiet, the way good answers like to arrive. Keep doing the small, faithful things until the big, faithful thing feels like the next natural step, not a rescue mission. I didn't circle a date on the calendar. I kept showing up. I let the days confirm what my heart was already breathing. On a midweek night with no special name, I folded laundry slower than usual and realized I wasn't narrating my life to an invisible audience. I was just there, grateful that simple had become enough. I saw the life we were building, not as an idea, but as a hallway with lights we turn on ourselves. And somewhere between a stack of shirts and the last glass in the sink, the certainty stopped asking permission. It didn't feel like pressure. It felt like peace choosing a shade. I kept the certainty quiet for a while, the way you cup a small flame so the wind doesn't turn it into a show. I didn't rush to make it official. I let my days keep proving the shape of it. There's a difference between wanting a moment and being ready to hold what the moment means after it fades. I wanted the second thing. So I paid attention to the rooms we share, how we move around each other when the day is plain, how the mood is affected by small choices, tone, timing, whether the joke lands because you aimed it with care, not because you needed a laugh. The more I noticed, the more I understood that love isn't a rescue boat. It's the water you both learn to swim in until it feels like a language your body knows without translating. I started talking to the boys in pieces. Not because I was unsure, but because it felt sacred to unpack it slowly. RM listened the way he always does, like he's building a bridge out of your sentences and inviting you to walk back over them with him. He said something simple that stuck with me, that commitment is just clarity with a backbone. Jin smiled in that older brother way that blesses you without making a ceremony out of it. Asked me what peace felt like in my body and told me to protect that feeling like it's a family heirloom. Suga asked the clean questions that save you from romantic fog. What will you give up to make room for this? What will you refuse, even if it sparkles? His tone wasn't hard, it was honest, and I needed that. J-Hope looked like sunrise and reminded me that joy isn't the prize at the end, it's the power source during. Jimin didn't add many words. He made space and let mine arrive on their own. And that kind of listening is a gift you feel days later. Taehyung, with that quiet gravity, told me to choose a symbol that means something to us and no one else. So I'll remember what we're doing when the world tries to turn it into content. I carried those lines around like small tools in a pocket. They changed the way I imagined the moment. I stopped thinking about cameras or aesthetic perfection and started thinking about context. Where do our hands already know what to do? Which corner has seen us at our messiest and stayed kind? I kept coming back to the table where we drink tea. It's not glamorous, it's a little scratched. One leg is shorter than the others, so it wobbles unless you set it the right way. But that table has hosted more real life than any stage I've ever stood on. We've laughed there, argued there, stayed too long there on nights when time forgot to push us out. If a promise is going to live, it should be able to live there first. I went ring shopping in the least cinematic way possible. No entourage, no big brand entrance, just me walking into a small place where the lights were soft and the saleswoman had kind eyes. I told her I wanted something honest, not loud, not shy, a shape that looked like steadiness. She brought out designs with names I didn't remember 5 minutes later. But there was one that felt like a sentence I've been trying to say clearly. Simple, elegant, strong, without trying to prove it. I held it and thought about how symbols can either speak for you or keep you speaking. I wanted the second one. I wanted a reminder, not a trophy. I left with the ring in a box that made a small click when it closed, and that sound followed me all day. The same afternoon, life did what it does when you start to move towards something holy. It tested if you meant it. The schedule shifted the wrong way. Someone called with something urgent that, if I said yes, would fall right through the middle of the evening we'd protected. I could feel my old logic warming up, polite and persuasive. It's just one night. You'll make it up. She'll understand. And maybe she would have understood. But that was never the point. Understanding isn't the same as being cared for. I sent a message that told the truth without emotion dressing it up. I'm not available tonight. Let's choose another slot. The world didn't end. The work didn't collapse. The commitment I made to our quiet stayed whole. And I could feel something inside me lock into place because of that one choice. In the days leading up to what I was about to do, I had another conversation I wasn't planning to have. This time with myself. I listed the parts of me that might try to sabotage the moment. The fixer who wants to script the perfect reply. The performer who wants to make the memory look good from the outside. The sprinter who wants to rush through the tenderness because it's uncomfortable to stand still. I told each of them they were not in charge tonight. Their voices got smaller, not because I argued well, but because I had a plan that made them unnecessary. I thought I'd plan a dinner. I didn't. I thought I'd write a speech. I didn't. I cleared the table and brewed the tea the way she likes it. Let the steam curl up into that hour of the evening when the apartment smells like us. The city outside was in that lovely in-between. Not noisy, not asleep, just breathing. I set the ring where my hand could reach it without making a scene. Then I waited. Not as a performance, but as a practice. Waiting without scrolling. Waiting without rehearsing. Waiting like the room itself could feel me say, I'm here. She came in with the day still on her, the way people do when they've been in the world and the world has been in them. I watched her put her things down the way she always does, in a small order that makes sense to her, and somehow to me now too. I didn't jump in with a line. We moved around the kitchen like we've learned to, a soft choreography that never tries to show off. We ate something simple. We talked about nothing important, first weather, a song that surprised us, the small victory that never makes it to anyone's story because it's so ordinary. Only the people involved understand why it matters. The air turned warm and familiar. There's a second right before you decide to do something brave where everything feels like it's holding its breath and also like it's never breathed better. That second arrived, and it didn't feel like pressure. It felt like alignment. I reached into the drawer and felt the box. It was surprisingly cool, like it had been waiting in shade. I placed it on the table without flair. Her eyes found it, then found me. There's a look people give you when they already know the shape of what's about to be said. It's not shock, it's relief meeting, gratitude. I opened the box and didn't launch into a speech. I kept my voice low because the moment was already loud enough. I told her I wanted to keep practicing the kind of love we've been building here, where attention is a daily discipline and gentleness doesn't need a holiday to show up. I told her I don't believe in perfect timing, I believe in faithful timing, and our days have been faithful enough to make this the next true step. I told her I want our house to be a place where quiet wins and where we teach future small humans, if we're blessed with them, that honesty is the safest room. I told her I was ready to give up whatever tries to cut that room into pieces. And then I asked, plain and fully awake, will you marry me? She didn't cry at first. She breathed. That was somehow louder than any answer. Then the tears came, not the hallway kind that measured distance, but the other kind that measured closeness. She said yes in a voice that didn't try to be beautiful and therefore was. We didn't stand and spin and cue a song. We Saturday. We let the room soak it in. I watched her look at the ring and then at me, and I knew the symbol had done its job. It kept me speaking. It didn't speak for me. I texted the boys a photo that wasn't for posting, just for family. The responses came back like a chorus you can feel in your ribs. RM with a line that sounded like a blessing written in pencil so life can add to it. Jin with that joy that makes you feel like the sun showed up inside your phone. Suga with a short sentence that said everything. Take care of each other like it's the main job. J-Hope sent enough hearts to start a parade. Jimin wrote nothing for a full minute and then, as if he'd been standing in the doorway of the moment with us, sent, I'm proud of how you waited. Taehyung sent a picture of a little ceramic vase he found at a market and said, this is for the flowers from the ordinary days. I thought sleep would run from me that night. It didn't. It found me fast because peace is a better sedative than exhaustion. I woke up early anyway because mornings have become my way of paying attention on purpose. I walked through the apartment like you walk through a museum of your own life and paused at the table, at the 2 cups, at the little click the box made when it closed. I didn't feel bigger. I felt smaller in the best way. Like I belonged to something quieter and stronger than my mood. Later, the practical questions started the way they should. Family, dates, what to keep private, what to share, where to place the lines so they hold instead of cut. We spoke about money like topography, about culture, like the soil our values grow in, about attention, like weather we can't control but can prepare for. None of it felt like trouble we needed to fear. It felt like a map we could read together if we walked slowly enough. I kept the notebook open on the counter because I wanted to keep learning even after the yes. I wrote down what yes feels like in real time. Not fireworks, not headlines, warmth that arrives and doesn't leave in a hurry. A steadiness in the hands, the sense that the air has decided to stay and help instead of rushing past. If I ever forget, I want to remember that this is what truth felt like when it finally took a shape we could both hold. And then I made breakfast like I always do on the mornings that matter, which is to say I tried not to impress anyone. Eggs, toast, fruit, music low, the pan exactly where it belongs, the window open just enough to let the city tell us it's waking up too. We ate without rushing, and I realized the thing I was most grateful for might be the simplest. We didn't have to become different people to get here. We had to become more honest versions of who we already were. I saw my future wife cry a long time ago and knew I was wrong. Last night, I saw her cry again and knew I had finally chosen right.